Welcome back, Venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am MR, and together with Tauros, today we have our yearly yapping episode. It's the 3rd year anniversary of VNture, so we will yap all about things that go behind the scenes when producing the podcast, as well as we'll shout out all cool people we had met along the way. So, Tauros, Mr. Cool Person number 1, how was the last year of VNture?
It was pretty cool, Cool Person number 2. But yeah, I mean, it's our 3rd year. We've been doing this for 3 straight years now. Happy birthday! Yeah, break out the kazoos and the party poppers and the balloons. Hooray!
Yeah.
It's been incredible, especially when we've been putting out weekly episode releases. And we've been sticking to that schedule, and it's really been difficult along the way, but it's been so many fun memories as well. Last year was pretty full, huh? Wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, you had to start with our weekly schedule because that's such a funny story, especially around January, February, that we created a huge backlog ahead because I knew that I had availability problems, and then we ran out of episodes. Was it around April? Right, something like that. So we had to schedule an emergency sessions to get back on track.
Yep, that was funny.
That was funny. I had to temporarily create a recording studio back when I went living with my parents for a moment. And it was such a nightmare. Mm-hmm. But we survived. We're back on track.
Makeshift box. There's your new recording studio.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. In the makeshift box, yeah.
No.
Something.
But yeah, I mean, that often happened where we'd had to have some rushed or even emergency recording sessions so that we could continue putting out new episodes with the fun ideas that we've had for episode topics. I remember some of the cool episodes this past year was that we started talking about specific character archetypes. In the past, we covered stuff like Ojo-samas, Imotos, the teachers, I think even the tsunderes of the visual novel world. And that was cool. It was a new outlook for us because we usually talk about specific visual novel titles in particular, but getting to focus on characters was something different, and I enjoyed those.
Yeah. So, what would be the next? Okay, we'll let the comments battle that out, and we'll see what the next character archetype will win. But I remember I really enjoyed the Tsundere's one, and that's something that was on the back of my head for as long as since the tier list episode, because that's the one episode in which we discussed the classic versus the modern tsundere. Mm-hmm. So in preparation for the tsundere archetype episode, I had to revisit that, and I was thinking to myself, wait, in the tier list itself, I remember I expressed how fond I was of the modern one, but then again, I don't have many examples of that because I only really liked one. It just so happens that one modern tsundere was so well executed, I really liked it. But I don't have many more examples of that I like.
Well, do you have more examples now?
I guess, possibly, but not to the same degree. Maybe I have more examples of modern, but not that I like them to the same degree as the Michiru from Grisaya that I brought as an example of modern tsundere. That one was done to perfection. That's why I was so fond back on the tier list episode of that. But on average, titles, I think I have to. Back on average, I have to relent and say, I think the classical tsundere is better. Because on average, I tend to like that more, even though I have a good standout example of the modern one.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I gotta agree. But it sounds like all of those new titles brought down your batting average.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But that's all right. That's all right. Speaking of new characters we could talk about, to anyone leaving comments, tomboys. Let's go.
If we must.
Oh my god, come on, MR.
They are fine.
Oh my gosh. But yeah. With getting to talk about the individual characters was nice. We get to talk about other visual novels. Oh, one really cool episode idea we did recently was our favorite soundtracks. I've definitely been looking forward to that for a long time, especially, getting to play the soundtracks in the background a little bit, but still balancing out how well we talk with it. Soundtracks, I feel, very underrated for a lot of titles, both in just the, I guess the amount of effort that gets put into them on the developer side, but also just the acknowledgement from a whole bunch of readers and whatnot. And so getting to highlight some of our favorites, get to talk about what makes for a good soundtrack, that was a joy.
That episode itself was a very practical, can I say it, take on a topic we've brought up before with Bruce. Because with BruceGoneLoose, we talked about music in VNs, or OSTs in VNs, in a very theoretical way. We only spoke about, try to explain why it plays a role and why we like it. But we never put that into practice. We never let the music speak for itself. So with the recent episode about OSTs, we decided no, it's fine. We need to finally try to run them in the background. And yeah, I really like how that experiment turned out to be. How I became the DJ and I was switching the tracks in the middle of our recording.
Yeah. Speaking of
now,
which...
Granted, I need to finish that thought. We were very careful of how to structure that episode because we were struggling. I believe we got it around February with a community guideline strike, and we were very careful not to anger YouTube more. So therefore we run OSTs in the background when we speak, and we tried to avoid any period of time that the music runs by itself. So the content ID system doesn't pick it up.
Some visual novel companies are pretty ruthless about hunting down any unauthorized uploads of their music tracks. There's a few other content creators who are far more, intimate with that. I remember years ago, I tried uploading the soundtrack to Lucy, The Eternity She Wished For, and that got copyright striked like within the day. I was like, holy crap. And, back then I was much more of a newbie and I wasn't really sure what was going on. So that was enough to scare me straight for pretty much any other visual novel soundtracks.
Yeah. I remember in preparation for that episode, I consulted Adze and Ange, who then later on said that he liked that idea so much he wants to join on the OSTs. That was funny. Because initially we didn't plan it as a guest episode, but Ange loved it so much, he's like, yeah, but can I join? Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, of course.
They have examples. Hell yeah, I do.
And everyone, no matter who we invite, everyone's got some favorite tracks they could share, and along with some notes of what makes it so good, the favorite visual novel that goes along with it. Yeah, it's such an easy question. Everyone loves talking about that kind of stuff. Their favorite tracks from their favorite VNs.
Yeah, that was so funny. The preparation for that episode has been in works for some time, but I'm really, really glad how it turned out to be.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed both recording that and prepping that up with you and Ange.
Speaking of, we got a community strike a while ago. And, for anyone who's not terribly familiar with YouTube's system, it's, if you do something in a video to break the rules, they give you a community strike, which is pretty much a warning and a few punishments that go along with it. No big deal. But if you get 3 community strikes, they delete your channel. And obviously, that would be disastrous. for us with all of our videos and stuff in the past. And so a copyright strike because of the visual novel soundtracks is a very realistic concern. And since we had one community strike, it's like, okay, we gotta wait for, this to expire for like several months before the community strike expires. So that's why we kept planning to do this soundtrack thing, but we had to keep pushing it back because of a sudden community strike.
Yep.
By the way, and about that, that's because of a certain guest who I won't mention just for their own sake. But we do some test recording beforehand, and we upload the test clips to YouTube to see how it sounds. And this guy said some funny, ironic stuff like, in Minecraft sort of material.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we suddenly get like an email or some sort of notification months later from YouTube of like, hey, you've been absolutely smited, get dunked on, you get striked for that. So thanks to that one certain guest who went and caused us headaches, that's what caused us to push back the OST soundtrack material. So thanks, dude.
Yeah, it was something. And it was not only on the test recording that wasn't ever public and was privated, but also that strike came a year after it has been uploaded. So we were so confounded. What happened?
Well, the real answer is that YouTube's AI automated software caught up.
Most likely, because the way I've appealed the community strike immediately got rejected, I assume again by automated process, and we had no recourse other than acquiesce, took down the video, and then wait out the community guideline strike. And I think there was also training I had to go through. So we get approved again. Oh, it's just like, the entire thing was so annoying.
Yeah, they make you watch a video of like, this sort of thing is not acceptable. It's like, how old am I? How old are they gonna treat me like this? I gotta watch an instructional video on following their rules.
Yeah. It was rough, okay?
Mm-hmm. But anyways, yes. Speaking of which, something along in that lines, MR, is there anything like in the past year or so that maybe you would have liked to have done differently? I don't want to say like any regrets, but just, something we've done in the past that it's like, well, now if we were doing it again, it'd play out a little differently.
Okay. There are two parts to this question. Do we change some things over time? Yes, we do. And I wanted to mention that, for example, in the report, we tried to experiment with the titles. And at some point, we just gave up instead of doing weird, obfuscated references. So, for example, if you go back to June 2024, we wrote Milk, Bug, and Kotodama to reference the titles we read. Next month, we just said, you know what? Let's just write titles. So in the thumbnail and the titles instead of just weird references.
Yeah, we're getting too cute with the puns and the mixes.
Yes, we did too much. And when it comes to, let's say, regrets or maybe remasters, the one remaster that comes to my mind and a topic I want to revisit is probably Icebergs, our very first one. I'd probably like to have a second take on the entire Iceberg. I mean, a remaster of sorts, or maybe how the Iceberg shapes up after 3 years, something like that.
Because like,
that's
for anyone
topic
who doesn't know, that was one of our first episode things we did, was creating each of our icebergs of visual novels, of all the titles we've read and enjoyed, starting at the top, which was like the most famous or most recommendable to others, and then as you get further and further down, it's the more niche stuff individual to us that we liked. And that's a good idea, something we could revisit, whether it's just changing the premise entirely of making it something a little more straightforward, or just seeing like the new stuff we've read in the meantime, or how our tastes have changed, or maybe even getting some input from other people about what maybe they think, or even getting a guest involved. Yeah, you're right. I feel there's a lot we could do to revisit this, huh?
Yeah.
Like, what would you do?
Again, I feel like either... again, I'm not sure whether or not we want to involve a guest unless that guest will create their own iceberg and confront ours, for example.
Yeah, totally.
I would enjoy seeing an Adze iceberg, for example. That would be super cool. And on the bottom, you can put that one Toho video that was the first video that exploded his channel, for example. How I would see our icebergs, I think I would just re-evaluate all the titles on that iceberg and maybe go lightning round. Because in the original iceberg, what made it so difficult, we spent quite a lot of time per title to explain it. Therefore, we had to split that video into multiple episodes. I'd like in the new iceberg to contain as much as possible from the levels. All of them, all the levels, not necessarily all the titles within an iceberg level. It depends on the time we spend. So my idea of the iceberg remaster would be one episode per person. We go through everything from the most shallow level to the most deepest level. Everything is self-contained instead of split between episodes. That's how I would see the icebergs remastered.
Okay, I mean, I feel if we have that many VNs, that many titles involved, that we're going to need a few episodes, right? We really want to get in depth into talking about these titles, yeah. I wouldn't want to just rush through something where I've got like 30 tiles up there and I only get like 1 minute to quickly recap what it's about and why I liked it and why it deserves its placement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. I think we could get a lot of episodes out of this. I think that's what the people want.
If that's the case, of splitting that into multiple episodes so each segment for a VN gets enough time to go in depth into each title and why it deserves this spot and not the other, then I feel like I still lean slightly more into a single episode revisiting all the levels of icebergs. Meaning, across 3 episodes, we will revisit multiple layers multiple times. Do you catch my drift?
I suppose.
Because I feel like when it comes to splitting episodes, I don't want to do the first episode is the shallow level. Then the second episode is middle level. And the third episode is the deep dark beyond. I feel like going horizontally instead of vertically would be better.
Okay, we can try that out. We can see how it goes. There's plenty of time.
True.
So yeah, you're right, but though some sort of iceberg in the future would be pretty cool to revisit. If you ask me though, there's another topic I would love to revisit. And that was the time we made up our own visual novel award ceremony with BarryBee.
Oh, that was cool.
We just spat out like dozens of categories. And some of them sounded all legit and stuff like the best soundtrack we've ever listened to, or the best art, or overall favorite. And then we just made up all sorts of ridiculous niche, like half joke categories, just to see the kind of titles that we would all think of and mention. That was really fun.
Yeah.
It was a great chance to talk about the titles that we haven't seen before, right?
Yeah, I think it has a lot of creative potential, and you can inject a lot of humor, right? Because you can create a most spectacular award and say this is the best drama title, right? And you can create the obvious award. That's it. That's it. So you can pick one obvious VN you would pick, and that's the category. Like, okay, that's actually funny. You can make a lot of jokes about it. Like,
so many.
Yeah, another murder mystery taken by Taurus. Okay, out of all of them, which is the most obvious? Go.
Stupidest plot twist.
Exactly.
Or smartest character. Biggest asspool. No.
See, you see the potential.
Exactly. That one felt like it was
cool.
great. That one was like, oh, it was sad that to end the episode, and I'm sure there could have been so much more that everyone would have loved to hear.
Exactly, and then again, from the creative standpoint, it has a good balance of somewhat funny and or informative from normal categories, and batshit insane, crazy, go funny. Like that strikes a good balance. We had some of those, some of one, some of the second category. That was super cool. When it comes to, I want also say, when it comes to, let's say, things I would like to do differently, there are some topics that we don't necessarily prepare as many examples. And I want to highlight one that, in my opinion, I did not prepare as great of an example, but it turned out okay. So this one is healing genres, because I don't really play those, okay? I just played that one, Made for Loving You, and I want to talk about that from the perspective of a person who doesn't really play that kind of safe space healing VNs and or titles. And I felt like, you know what? After thinking about it, I had enough to say, and some relatability, let's say, that it is soothing the soul, especially after you get tired from work. You fire your comfy VN, and then it's like, oh, that's a nice way to end the day. So I actually was surprised how much I could say about that, despite pretty much being alien to the genre. Unlike, in my opinion, I think we could have made more preparation for the ceremonies, rituals, and festivals. And why I mentioned the second one, ceremonies, rituals, and festivals, because I think around 8-minute mark, I realized that almost all the examples I brought were spoilers. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk about them.
Exactly. You know, we can't be spoiling stuff.
Like, yikes.
No way.
Exactly.
No spoiler zone.
In the middle of recording, I was like, yikes, wait a moment. I don't want to talk about them. So I need to be more vague.
And to be fair, you know, for that festivals episode we did, I didn't have many examples to pull off of either. I mean, I just knew the basic gist of the whole school festival kind of vibe and atmosphere, because that's an anime staple, right? The whole festival, whether it's a school festival or a town village festival. But I didn't really have anything specific to draw on. So I just felt like, well, I guess I'll go along with the flow. And then we were both like, well, I guess we'll just talk about vibes.
Yeah, because the potential for the topic is, in my opinion, huge. Because we can talk about something that is commonplace in anime and anime-adjacent media, meaning festivals, but more broader than that, it's a comparison we could between depiction of real-life events and ceremonies, rituals, culture, versus creating those special moments, special dates in a fictional media. So completely pulled out of the ass, ceremonies and rituals, etc., which are sometimes very important for the plot progression. And again, realizing the second part, I prepared almost exclusively all spoilerific examples. I had to pull back into the most generic, school festivals are cool, aren't there? Because in the moment, during the recording, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to spoil that. That's so cool.
Now, to be fair, I am still glad that we did an episode and talked about it. I would still prefer to have an episode, even if it's not quite up to our standards, rather than just not have the episode at all. Obviously, the best solution of all is to just do a good job to begin with. But, you know, barring that, if extenuating circumstances come up and that's not possible, I'd still like to put something out because I'm sure there are many people who enjoyed, hearing it. Or at least, at the very least someone. And that's always been my philosophy, is that, I mean, if even one person enjoys the stuff you're creating online, then that's time well spent. You're making the world a better place, right? So that's exactly. I feel like I'm still happy that we got it done. Just, that's again something that we could have done better if we ever address this again in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I hope in the future we will avoid running into the okay, we didn't prepare enough. Let's talk about bullshit for the rest of the
no,
and spin our wheels in the most generic take possible. But changing topic for a moment, I gotta say, when it comes to surprises last year, I am absolutely flabbergasted how cool every single episode with Vimi is, despite those episodes rarely focusing on Japanese VNs whatsoever. So this is one rare occasion we had, in total 3 episodes with Vimi, that we speak with a indie VN developer and hear his perspective on VN development, VN story writing, when he was describing how he deals with character development specifically on shorter titles. Okay, and most recently, in the last year's episode, we talked about his turmoils publishing VNs on Steam. So, hearing him speak about from the perspective of an indie VN developer is, I am surprised every single time when we have a topic with him, how cool that is to hear his perspective on things. And I'm saying that absolutely honest, that on average, when it comes to VNs, I prefer the Weavers, the Japanese produce, the most stereotypical, the drill, right? I tend to not read the Western VNs altogether. But still, having a developer on the podcast and hearing his struggles and his perspectives on it, like, damn, that hits different, okay? That definitely hits different.
It's a new perspective, yeah. Especially when you have someone like Vimi who has that hands-on experience and has that knowledge to share, and is a very good talker and to begin with. Is very charismatic as well. He's cool.
Yeah. Every single time we had with him is so different in a vibe, but so interesting.
Speaking of which, so since we're kicking off 3 years of us putting together this amazing podcast, do you have any, let's say, New Year's resolutions or any birthday wishes for the future of what we can aspire towards for all our future episodes? For me, to go first, I suppose, I would like to do more spoilery topics, especially the analysis stuff focused on one title. We had one spoiler topic where it talked about asspulse of the really stupid plot twists that you sometimes see in visual novels, and we had to make it spoiler zone because there's no way you can talk about stupid plot twists without spoiling the twists, of course. That was really cool, and we got to really drill into the whys of several visual novels and what made them the way they are. And then, of course, we also had a big spoiler episode about Demon's Roots. It's not entirely a visual novel, but it's somewhat adjacent, and both MR and I played that game, or read that title, however you want to say, and we both had a lot of thoughts about it, especially thoughts that had to do with a lot of the characterization and ending. And so when we discussed it in the report, we couldn't cover quite as much as we wanted to say. But then we decided to have an episode totally devoted to Demon's Roots, and I thought it had a lot of great material in it that we aren't always able to pull off for regular spoiler-free episodes. And hopefully, even anyone who listened in, who isn't interested in Demon's Roots at all, still found a lot of it interesting and a lot of the points that were made and the things that we liked and disliked about the title. So I think there can be some value in doing, very spoilerific episodes where we share our thoughts about specific titles. I think there's a lot we can do with that, and I think there's a lot that other people would enjoy listening to, those who have read the title and even those who haven't, who have zero interest in it but still want to hear the breakdowns. So I'd like to do more of those. I guess you could say that's my resolution.
Nice, okay. How could they say? When it comes to spoiler episodes, or rather the episodes in which we focus and or allow spoiling the title completely, they unshackle us, right? So we can go really in depth, and honestly, sometimes it creates a very interesting discussion. For example, something kind of brushed off, but it stayed with me since the Demon's Root discussion. You were very quick to dismiss a topic I really wanted to go delve into deeper. And maybe that is because how we read differently or something, or observe the title differently. But you were very quick to say, oh, yeah, Demon's Root beats you over the head, how slavery is bad. I'm like, yeah, but that's very interesting how they portray next level of evil. And you're like, oh, yeah, whatever, beats you over the head. No, let's focus on that. Because they not only started with the slavery as main topic, but they went over to showcase next level, next symptoms, such as create a generation that don't even know they are enslaved. And I really wanted to hone in on the topic, but you steered away. Now, whether or not it's because you admitted in the past that you tend to go with the flow and read less analytical and more like an amusement ride, the VMs.
I don't know
again,
about
if I'm wrong somewhere, please correct me if I'm wrong. I've stopped many times in Demon's Root and I was thinking to myself, wow, what would be the next steps in what they're trying to portray? How such a simple concept of ruling through enslavement winds up more and more and more and more. And there's no end to it, and the end goal will become like 1% controlling the 99%. And like,
Although you are making...
it was very cool episode to showcase our two different takes on the same topic.
Right, and
That's
I hope you're not getting too distracted because you're trying to weasel out of the question of what cool New Year's resolutions do you have, MR?
Yeah, I'm trying to buy some time, okay, to think about the answer to that. Honestly, I want to go back to our episodes with guests, because probably this is the most fun I have every single time scheduling the episodes with guests, and most likely having to find a common place and a common topic for them to talk about. So for example, one of the standouts, I vividly remember how much fun we had talking with Boardrogin, who went all Chuny on us with his Chuny episode, and he unleashed all the Chuniness, for example, or with Azai Kioska, and we talked about how fantasy world geopolitics can shape the story. Those are very unique titles, and I really enjoyed every single time when we have a guest on a podcast who says, okay, this is my topic, let me show you how it's done. I'm like, okay, that's so cool.
Exactly, because, we're not experts on everything. We have our own likes and dislikes and things we've read and things we haven't read. So when we're able to have other big fans or YouTube content creators or part of the industry involved as guests, very often they have incredible perspectives that, MR and I aren't privy to. And we get to hear their explanations, their sides of the story about certain aspects, and really drill them with some questions and for greater understanding. So that hopefully, we and our listeners can really learn something new about it. I really like having the guests over too. Yeah, it's exactly as you said.
Exactly. Like a lot of them even propose those topics because obviously in the behind the scenes we kind of discuss what kind of topic you want to bring. Maybe you want to something from we have an idea on, but you can chime in. And for example, I vividly remember the episode we did with Nene-san about what makes an ending. That was super interesting to talk about. And that's also an episode in which I brought up the topic of true ends, right? And I try to convince you guys that true end doesn't have to be the finale. Doesn't have to. It is often a crescendo, like a big ending of it, or a send-off, but it doesn't have to be always, all the time. So I remember that was a very cool topic and very nice to hear different opinions on that matter. So yeah, my biggest wish is more guests, okay?
Yeah.
More guests. So I'll get back to spamming their DMs so they return and or we get some new ones as well.
Yeah, we're always on the lookout. We're always interested for more cool peeps. Yeah, anything else you want to cover, Amar?
When it comes to, how can I say, our podcast, I want to experiment more. So I felt like last year we tried some weird directions. So for example, in the last year we did our VNture tryouts. The first entry in the VNture tryout, we had a short title spree in which we all both take a lot of short titles, read them, and then gave quick summary. That's something I would love to revisit. Specifically, sometimes we get emails from VN developers that say, "Oh, try our game, try our games." I'm like,
or demos, yeah.
I don't know when. Okay, when it comes to demos, I don't like playing demos. Let's be honest. I'll be honest. I don't know. When it comes, I try to avoid it. But then again, when we get a very wholesome emails from developers, it's hard to say no. So maybe I'm weak like that. I'm too soft. I don't know. When it comes to tryouts, I really enjoyed that format. Because we had an opportunity to read and talk about short titles. Especially for me, I don't read short titles, okay? I oftentimes read very long epochs instead of short and sweet titles.
Normally, if we have like our reports every month, that's the stuff we've been reading, or at least the meatier visual novels that we can really discuss. But where does that leave the smaller titles, like the short indie projects that are only like an hour or two long, or the things that we tried and then kind of dropped after a few hours? I feel like that sort of that rapid fire smaller showcase would be great for us to just bring like a bucket full of stuff that we can quickly recap and explain and give our short thoughts about. And then that way we can pack our half-hour episode full of content, full of all sorts of thoughts and variety of opinions about things. Yeah, I really like those as well. That'd be the hardest part, though. The hardest part about making this episode again would be we would both have to read a bunch of smaller indie experimental titles. Just like but everything else.
It is. Yeah. I want to say that at the very least, while it is hard to maybe find all of those, at least once we do find, it's low commitment because each one of them is pretty short.
But just like every other visual novel fan, the hardest part is actually sitting down and reading a title. It's great finding new stuff and adding things to your backlog and then reminiscing about some of your favorite titles, and it's like sometimes it's hard to just sit down and actually open that VN.
That's a harsh truth, but yeah, you are correct, my friend. When it comes to experimenting, I feel like I want also, and this is my hope for the next year as well, try at some point to incorporate your idea, since, oh my god, I don't remember. I think you mentioned it on the first year about the book club. Okay, so in some way to try reading at the same time a title with you and give periodically our thoughts so far. I don't know how to realize it yet. How multi-parter would that be? I'm not sure, but I would definitely like to experiment with the book club idea. Going back to picking titles, so the thing you just mentioned right now, that would require us to agree upon title. I suppose that's one of the approaches, and maybe even having some sort of person who is acquainted with that title to guide us how we can structure it. So for example, if it's a title with choices, if we go both blind, how the hell do we know how to stop and talk about the same thing, right?
Yeah.
We would need an outside knowledge, and this is where the third person juror of sorts would have to step in and tell us, okay, you guys read till this moment and then talk about it or something like that. Or maybe when those choices come up, you pick those ones, I guess. It's weird, but I still would like to try it. And maybe this is a case to find VNs that do not split in any way. Okay, so I'll give an example. Rand series don't really have splits. Ixchil doesn't really have splits. Demon Roots didn't really have splits, right? Majority
No,
of
they could
those
have.
choices were
After you finish a dungeon, sort of.
what do you mean?
I mean, there's a lot of titles, including Demon's Roots and stuff, where there's no clean, chapter breaks, I suppose you could say. Actually, I take that back. Demon's Roots did have chapter breaks, but those were really far spread out. So if we're going to try and read something blind alongside someone else reading blind, you get that question of when do you stop? And how do you communicate to the other person?
Stop.
Exactly.
When I meant splits, I meant choices that make story go in different direction. I didn't mean endpoints.
Okay, I gotcha.
Although probably both are beneficial. So the story doesn't split and have good chapterization. So I agree with you on that. Well, that's why maybe finding a title that doesn't... Gaktun of the Golden Lightning doesn't really have splits, for example. So there are enough titles that don't really feature choices that branch off the story, or at least doesn't branch the overall story, maybe small divergences within a chapter. That's it. That we could pick up and have that as a part of the book club. But I don't think we could pick up a Mareeck with 5 heroine, because I guess we need to agree upon the heroine order or something like that.
And then find a flowchart or something and just stick to that.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
the first time I read
would...
one of those, I don't like following the flowchart. It's like, I'm just going to go make my own decisions. And then after that, we can.
Exactly.
Yeah, but again, if you're trying to read something blind alongside someone else, then it's like, well, the obvious question is, how do we figure this out together?
Yeah.
But anyways, those are questions for another day.
Yeah, true. But that's definitely type of experiment I want to try and or maybe revisit in the next year. Maybe search for a title that would fit, that we both didn't read. We both are somewhat interested in, and we both go blind, and it fits that kind of approach. It doesn't split too much, and it follows linear progression, more or less.
Okay.
So yeah, that's it. And more guests. Yeah, I want more guests. I'm spamming them right now. Okay. Spamming invites.
Nice.
But yeah, that's definitely my hopes for the future.
And of course, the number one hope is that we continue making content that all of our viewers enjoy. Otherwise, there's no point to this.
Exactly. I have to give all the shout out to all our guests, as well as all our listeners. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Okay. Oh yeah, and before I forget, oh my god, I would also do this again. We also try to collaborate with others, and we sometimes get invited to their channels. A year ago, I have been invited to the Villain Arc podcast, and we'll probably put that Villain Arc podcast channel in the description. Please go visit them. Those were very swell guys. It was Adze, who was a guest on our channel, as well as Devo Sky, who had me there as a guest. So thanks to them a lot. And I completely forgot last time when we spoke about it to give them a shout out, and I almost forget today. So no, I remembered. Shout out to them.
All right. Yeah, and as for all our guests who we've worked with in the past year, that would include BarryBee, Ange, Vimi, Azai, Adze, BruceGoneLoose, and Radiant Wave, all of which were awesome people to work with, and we had a blast with. I hope they enjoyed it too, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it, obviously. So make sure to check all of them out as well. They do good stuff for the whole visual novel sphere.
Exactly. All the links to their channel will be in the description below, so check them out.
But yes, so here's to a third year continuing to do this, and here's to another year of VNture podcast.
Yeah, cheers. And I think that's a very good place to end it all. So thanks all our listeners for tuning in. Please comment in the comments what would be the next character archetype you want to see visited, and we'll consider that. And I guess if no one says anything, it could be tomboys.
Tomboys, let's go! Woo!
Okay, thanks all listeners. VNture out.
VNture out.